Thank you everybody for coming and joining us for Workfrom's Webinar Wednesday. I'm Eric Hargrove, and with me today is a wonderful, exciting, fantastic founder, entrepreneur, and author and public speaker. I'd like to introduce you to Tijana Momirov, and she is the founder of, excuse me, hold on. She's the founder of Startup Setup, which essentially helps you set up your startup. And also the co-author of a book called Your Company with No Walls. And I'm super excited to hear more about that. So without further ado, I'll leave it to you and let you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric, for the warm welcome and nice words. And hello, everybody, and thanks for coming. I'm just gonna use a few seconds to start sharing my screen so that I can. Okay, so it's disabled for me. So if you guys can take a look at that, so that we can then focus on talking only. In the meantime, I can just maybe give a few words of introduction about myself. As Eric mentioned, I run this independent consulting called a remote startup setup, where I help founders of tech startups go from the business idea to the MVP launch, all based on the remote work and leveraging the gig economy, freelancers, or as I like to say, expertise on demand, in order to be even more lean than ever. My background is in software engineering and product management, and in the past 10 years, I worked fully remotely, traveling the world as a so-called digital nomad, and it's been a long journey around the world, and also professionally, from being a programmer to product manager and startup consultant and mentor for various organizations. So what we are seeing nowadays is that remote work is booming, but it's much more than just replicating the office work while sitting at home. It gives us many, many other possibilities, and some of them are really interesting for us solopreneurs, who are all the time on our own, wearing different hats and fighting to get everything done. And this is exactly what can be a game changer for us. Shall I try to share the screen again, Eric?
Sure, I think you.
Okay, let me see just. Did it work?
I can see you.
Okay.
I can see your screen.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. So today we're talking about us solopreneurs with this opportunity to finally have a team. Traditionally, there used to be this belief that only big corporations, enterprises, big organizations can have many employees, and the rest of us were doomed to the do-it-yourself, whether we know how to do it or not. My clients are usually startup founders, and they not only do they have the limited budget, also there is simply not enough workload to have like 40 different full-time employees in order to have every possible role. So there was always this kind of situation that we have to wear different hats, and we had to struggle to learn how to do things that are not necessarily what we are good at. And it's a real struggle. So usually my clients, startup founders, that they get even shocked when I'll tell them that sometimes in the beginning we need more people than in the later phases of the project, because traditionally it used to be like founders taking pride in growing the company for, let's say, 5 to 15 employees within a year or so, because that used to be a parameter of how successful a company is. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. As I said, remote work is much more than replicating the office work. It means access to the global talent. It means expertise on demand. It means expertise accessible to everybody, not just big corporations, not even just the small startup founders, but even us solopreneurs, people who are one-person show running our own business. And it's not always easy, but nowadays we have this access to people who can help, and we can delegate some tasks too, and we can get these additional skills and expertise on demand when we need it. As I said, like, my consulting is independent. I'm completely alone in what I do, but in the course of previous couple of years, I worked to, I'm not even sure with how many freelancers I really work. It could be that it's even 20, I'm not sure exactly now, but here I just gave some of the examples of the tasks and types of work that I've delegated to different team members of my non-existent team, because I'm a solopreneur, right? I'm a person who is running my own business. For example, there is the logo design, a very artsy thing to do. If you're not such an artistic person, it's not so easy. You know which message you want to convey, right, but not how to do it. Also, there are these technicalities of having the right format, the right background, transparent or not. So you can just talk to a freelancer who does this nice graphics for you. Videos, photos, audio editing. I wanted to do a nice video for my website where the text flies in the moment I pronounce a sentence in all these aligned bullet points. So difficult to do yourself. It was not getting in sync at all. I did my first episode of podcast a few weeks ago. Again, when I want to do the intro with a nice transition, it all takes time. And then I talk to people who do this multiple times per day, day by day, year after year, and they get this done for me in a very efficient way. As I'm all about MVPs, I did my first website a couple of years ago when I was still validating the idea for my consulting. I did it myself. And once I saw that it's working, that I'm getting some interest and clients, I decided, of course, to do it in a bit more professional way, hired a WordPress programmer who did it in a nice way with like more functions and much easier to follow up. Later on, how I was working on the go, I was learning that I need some more additions. Would be nice to have a calendar so that people can book a call with me. Would be nice to have a form so that they can submit some information. Would be nice to have a mailing list so that I can stay in touch with people who visit my website. Each time I would get some idea, I would just reach out to a freelancer, and they would add something on my website that would make my work easier immediately. SEO, again, I do understand the meaning to do it. It's a different thing. You can also ask somebody to do this for you. The slides, unless it's such a simple slide like this one that I'm having right now, takes time. So usually I just put all the content, I literally just throw it on the presentation and then ask somebody to do it in a nice aligned way, the text flying in and all of that. And while they are at it, I can focus on preparing for the conference, even going to the site if it's not an online event, and everything else that needs to be done. Book, Eric mentioned that recently I did a book that was kind of my quarantine project to finally end the procrastination of the book writing and publish the book during the quarantine. Book is a big thing to do, even in the quarantine. You don't have enough work, enough time for everything. So just for the book project, just an example, just for the book that I did, I worked with 4 different freelancers. There was one who did a book cover. So it's, again, a little bit artistic work, somebody who's good with graphics. We did a couple of different versions, actually very different versions, because me and my co-author didn't really have the clarity in the beginning. So we did a couple of different versions until we settled on one that we really felt aligned with. Proofreading, one thing that people think it's not necessary. Actually, my co-author is a native English speaker, but we did find it super useful to have a fresh set of eyes on our text, on our context, somebody who can not only discover if we made the grammar mistakes, but also if everything is really clear to the reader, because to us it's clear, obviously it came from our mind, but it's very much different when somebody else reads it. That was super useful. Formatting, if you're self-publishing using platforms as Amazon, they require specific format. It's not always easy to get it right. And also to be user-friendly with those nice table of contents with the indents and all clickable and searchable and etc. Again, we had a 3rd freelancer doing that for us. And then the 4th team member for the book project was a freelancer who did the keywords research. There is no point in publishing the book if nobody's going to be able to find it, right? So again, if you're doing it yourself, you're never sure if this is the keyword that is too specific, so nobody will find it. If it's too general, so it's going to be too much competition. It's just really difficult, and writing a book is already hands full, and you don't want to be thinking about these things. Also on the platforms like Amazon, it gets complex. They have not only the keywords, they have categories, subcategories. If you're thinking about self-publishing, you will see that it's quite complex. So the result, the output, the delivery of this gig was actually a full set of instructions that I used to go and in a few minutes publish my book on Amazon just by following the instructions of the keywords, categories, and everything else provided by a freelancer who does this as I said, multiple times per day, day by day, year after year. So they are the experts, and they can not only save the time. Time is not the only resource that we are talking about here. It's also the so-called headspace. It's something that very often we as solopreneurs wearing different hats lack, and that, which leads to a burnout because we're trying to do so many different things at once. And we always think, I'm just going to Google, I'm just going to research, just going to do that myself. But it's actually very, very difficult. And this is what makes us sometimes super exhausted. So these are just a couple of examples. I had more. I'm not even sure. I guess it was like in the past couple of years, 20 freelancers for sure that I worked with. These are just some of the examples that me as a solopreneur delegated in the past couple of years. So now I would like to go in the main actually part of these presentations, and those are the tips on how to delegate to your non-existent but still present team as a solopreneur. One of the important things is to have the clarity on what it is that you need to delegate. It's like a diagnosis in a way. What hurts, right? What the struggle is about, and what result would make you feel better, what result would make your life easier. This is the first thing that you need to think about. What it is that I procrastinate on, what makes me nervous, frustrated, what simply doesn't work for me and I really want to take off my plate. Another thing, and probably one of the most important tips, is to understand whether it's the lack of time or it's the lack of expertise that you're struggling with, because those are two very different cases. If it's the lack of time, it means that you know how to do it, you simply don't have the time. You would go ahead and write a very specific list of instructions, set of instructions. So you would go ahead and tell a freelancer, listen, this is how this should be done. I simply do not have the time, so please just follow the instructions and do it for me. In this other case, when it's the lack of expertise that you're experiencing, you need to be able to describe, to express your pain point, what it is that you're struggling with, so that the freelancer, the expert, can provide a suggestion, a solution. So in that case, it's really important to be able to express your struggle so that the suggested solution can actually work for you. Once you are clear on what you need and what you expect from this delegated task, it's the time to find the right freelancer, the right expert, the right collaborator. Unless you have some really solid direct contact, like somebody came super recommended, somebody with really good reputation, I always go and reach out to freelance marketplaces. Yes, they do charge a fee, but it's a service like any other, and I think it's worth it. It's very easy to browse over there. It's easy to compare the references from previous clients. There are all these other convenient options to deal with international payments, contracts, all of that, escrow accounts for the safety of your payment, and much more. There are freelance marketplaces for specific things like translation or graphic design or something like that, or some of those really global ones where you can find anything. But I really think it's a good solution with just a little bit of patience to browse and find the right person. I usually get like top 3, and then I decide if it's something really important. I also jump on a call, like it can be like 10 minutes call, but just to get an impression of the match between me and the person I'm going to collaborate with. And this is actually super fast way of finding somebody to delegate the tasks to. Not only that it's important to find this right person for the job, it's also important to do it at the right time and on the right terms. There are very different freelance arrangements. It can be full time, but with long-term arrangement, or some smaller workload that's going to last even longer, or it's going to be a high workload, like many hours per week, but for a shorter amount of time, or even on as needed basis. It means that you just get in touch, you explain to somebody what you're working on, what you need help with, and then you just stay in touch, and you let them know when they need to jump in and help you out with something. When I say that it's important to know at what time you engage in working, collaborating with somebody, I mean on the phase of the project you're working on. For example, sometimes we think that we're going to save some money and not talk to a branding strategist, and then we go ahead and hire a graphic designer. They provide all these graphics for us. And then later on, when we actually work on our branding, it looks like we need to redo our graphics or something like that. So sometimes actually it's not really saving the time and money, but on the contrary, so sometimes it's really good to get even like a one call, 1 hour consulting with somebody to make the right decision, for example, branding in this case, and then go ahead and implement those in for example, the graphics you do. Similar way, of course, you're not going to do the formatting before you've done the proofreading, because then you're going to need to change something, things and edit the file, and many other things like that. So this, so sometimes it's really not saving the resources if you postpone talking to an expert, even if it's for just like a short consulting. And think about some roles that don't require a lot of work, but are really important to be kind of a long term. For example, a virtual assistant, somebody that is very often going to respond to the emails or reach out on your behalf. It's really important that they know your style, your tone of writing, responding, that they understand your idea, your personal brand. So this is a person that you want with you for long term. Even though as a solopreneur, probably you don't have enough workload so that you keep them as a full-time team member. So you can always have this arrangement there with you a couple of hours per week or on as needed basis, but that they are with you on a long term. For example, the website can be done by somebody in a couple of weeks, and then you can just stay like this, and you can occasionally get a maintenance. But there are things, type of tasks that is really good to have somebody permanently on. For example, we did the first episode of our podcast recently, and we had a freelancer doing the editing of the audio files, and we plan to work with the same person for the next episodes, because it's just going to be easier. We already have the understanding, and then just every other episode should be easy to follow up on. So these are some things to think about, what kind of arrangement you want with a freelancer, depending on the phase of the project and type of the task and type of the work they are doing for you. The input I usually provide in terms of a numbered bullet points, similar to these slides. I guess you notice that this is how I like to present, because this, first of all, helps me. I can always make sure that I provided all the information I wanted. So was it the first, second, third thing I wanted to say? Fine, it's all there. Also, to the freelancer, it's easy to check if they have all the information they need and said, okay, sure, now I can start working on it. In the same way, I do with the output. Again, it's important for my own clarity, so that I make sure that I know exactly what I want and that I expressed it properly. And at the same time for the freelancer to acknowledge that they have enough information to proceed, so that they can also revisit during the work. And finally, before they send over the final delivery, right, they can check and see if everything is as we agreed. We as solopreneurs always take our business a little bit emotionally. It's kind of our child, it's our personal brand. Very often we are really involved as a person in what we do. Very often our business even carries our name. Many of the solopreneurs actually don't have a separate business name. They do their work activities by their own personal name. So it's very personal. So that's why sometimes we get a little bit emotional if a freelancer makes a suggestion that something can be done in a little bit different way. But we need to remember that we actually hired them in the first place because we did need help. So when we already have the opportunity to talk to an expert, let's use this opportunity. So let's talk to them, ask them what they suggest, how would they usually go about in these situations, how do they do this with the other clients they work with, etc. It's actually a really nice and valuable opportunity to hear some other opinion, because we don't get to hear that a lot as solopreneurs. We miss this brainstorming with the colleagues, right? So this is an opportunity to do a little bit of brainstorming and hear other person opinion. And in the end, we might even decide to do it how we wanted in the first place. But being open to hearing the suggestion, I think it's really valuable. One of the things that often come as, I would say, mistake with startup founders, with solopreneurs, people who are running super small operations, they somehow believe that any kind of management would be an overhead. It's like simple. It's just me and another person. We can jump on a call and we just agree what needs to be done. But actually, very, very soon things scale. We have a couple of clients, couple of collaborations, couple of initiatives we are involved in, and even ourselves can lose track and imagine the other people, especially people who are on that on as needed basis arrangements. So they just jump in from time to time. They're not always there. They need to catch up on what's been going on in your project, etc. So it really is important to use some management collaboration tools and processes from the beginning, even while the things look simple. It can be a board like Trello or Mondays with really simple structure like to do in progress and closed with those bullet points for the input and desired output. But just that it's there with the due date and all of that, so that whenever you're not sure, you can just take a look and check what's going on, you and everybody else who is working. Also, sometimes it's going to be a situation that, for example, the programmer who did your website is simply not available anymore, and you need something to be fixed or improved, and then you get somebody else to work, and it's really much easier for them if they can take a look and see what's been done so far and where they need to continue, and the links to some resources, etc., everything in one place. The processes, when we say processes, it can be a weekly check-in or monthly, or depending really on type of work you do, but some kind of process that everybody can expect and already have in their schedule. Of course, when I work on more complex projects, I use more complex tools. In software development, we use Jira, GitLab, we use whole Scrum framework as a methodology. Of course, that would already be an overhead for a simple book formatting, but having a Trello board, I would say it's appropriate. One thing that I really like about this whole thing about the gig economy and expertise on demand and all of us providing and consuming services in the same time is that we are somehow equal. We are in the same time service providers, solopreneurs, consultants, service consumers when we work with freelancers. So the collaboration type of professional relationship we have is, in my opinion, healthier than it used to be in the traditional environment when we had like an employer and an employee and somebody like expressing exact orders to another person. So what we have here is more like this kind of vocabulary. What would be your suggestion? How do you usually go about in this situation? What would be the next step? When would it be good for you? When would you be available? So this is the kind of professional relationship you want nowadays if you work with somebody who is also an independent expert freelancer as yourself, probably as a solopreneur. If you're a consultant or you have like an e-commerce shop or any kind of business, like you would understand that that everybody is somehow business on their own, and they're also on their side running multiple projects. So for example, if you're gonna need them next week, let them know in advance. If you're not gonna need them, also please let them know, because they might be losing another project if you're not letting them know. So all of that is super important. Also, as we were mentioning, with some type of work, it's really important that these people stay in touch with you on long-term basis, because they simply get to know what you're working on, how you are as a person. All of us solopreneurs, we really have this personal touch in the work we do, within the work we do. So it's really sometimes nice to keep working with the same people for a longer period of time. It's much easier for them to jump in. So staying in touch is really important. It can be by using some of those general social networks for professional connections like LinkedIn, or maybe you have some separate Slack channel for these kind of on-demand collaborations, or some mailing list or quarterly updates. Depends how you like to do it, but it's nice to keep in touch. And also from time to time, you can also make connection, recommend these people to the other solopreneurs, and then just all together you help each other and stay in touch. And people are going to be much more willing to be available for you when you need them later on, if you keep in touch with them throughout the years of your business. I'm really trying to be brief so that we have more time for chatting, because Q&A is what I really like. So I'm really leaving a lot of time for that. But here are just a couple of resources. First of all, my website, where you can find also a couple of blog posts. There is one that I would especially recommend. I think it's maybe even one of the early ones, so you will need to scroll a little bit. It's about building a business around expertise. It might be interesting for some of you who are looking for some ways of becoming solopreneurs by providing your expertise as a service. Some other stuff over there can be also interesting about this kind of different arrangements and how to onboard a team efficiently. Onboarding is also something that needs to be super efficient, and people are not staying with you for a long time, right? It doesn't make sense to spend 2 weeks onboarding somebody who's going to stay with you for 3 weeks, for example, or something like that. So there's some information over there, also my LinkedIn contact, and the book that Eric mentioned, the book that got out and published during the quarantine. I like the title. Me and Vanessa, my co-author, came up with Your Company with No Walls, where we obviously don't only mean the literal walls of the company buildings that we finally left during this pandemic, but also all these kind of limitations to thinking that you have to do it all on your own if you are not a big corporation able to have all these employees, the limitations of different locations. Now we have the access to the global talent and many things like that. So we are talking about this remote leadership, whether you're a leader of a big enterprise, which is more Vanessa's field, or a leader of a small startup or a solopreneur, which is mostly my field. But there are some also general tips that we cover that apply to any type of leadership and good management, whether it's a small freelance team or a huge corporation. I really believe that I managed to do this briefly and that we now can have enough time for the Q&A, which is my favorite part. What do we do, Eric?
Awesome, Tijana. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. One of the first questions that just actually popped in was from Kathleen Marie, and she said, where do you find all of the expertise that you mentioned on demand? And I know you in your conversation in the slides you had mentioned marketplaces, and I'm familiar with Upwork and Fiverr, and perhaps if you have a couple that you might have or use or that you might be able to share, just to give her a bit more insight on where you find all this expertise that you outsource to.
Exactly those ones that you mentioned. Upwork is probably the biggest one so far. So it can also be even scary when you go there and you see what's on offer. But if you have some patience, you can find literally everything there, from the simple tasks, services offered, to like super complex. For some of my clients, I found like future CTOs of their startups and like really high-level experts over there that stayed for many years with the company. So you can really find everything. Maybe it's a little bit more like technical, which for me works well because I'm in this domain. So maybe if your work is like completely non-technical, like you're really into translation, legal, something like it, there might be better marketplaces. But for my type of work, I really like Upwork. As I said, I'm happy to pay the commissions because it does help a lot. They have also all these, convenient tools so they don't have to think about the contracts, international payments, and all of that. Also, what's good for me, if I work with on behalf of my client, they can give me hiring manager permission so that I can manage the team, like post jobs, interview people, hire, change workloads, hourly rates, etc. But the invoices go directly to them, and they have full transparency, worklogs, everything on their side. So if you are thinking of outsourcing the outsourcing, this is actually what I'm doing for my clients, then Upwork has this nice feature of having this person who can handle this for you with full transparency. Fiverr, I use actually a lot. I know that it has this reputation of low quality, but it's also low price. And for some simple tasks, you don't really need much more. It's maybe not $5, maybe it's 10, but it's somewhere there. But if you just need somebody to make a simple update on your website, for example, as I mentioned, I had this like the need of integrating the mailing list, like it's just like a couple of small things done. It's simple enough. It's simple enough, and you can do it over there. For example, So Fiverr, yeah, I think it works. You just need to be to have a little bit patience, but that works. So these are the two that I mostly use. As I said, I'm in the tech. I would imagine that if you are working in some other field, like legal or translation or something, there would be some other specific websites. But in any case, try to use all the features that the website offers, because they do offer a lot of different kinds of browsing, searching. When you post the job, you can have so many options, whether you want to make it public or not, whether you want people to apply or you want to invite them. When you invite them, based on what you invite them, and then you can shortlist. And I mean, there's so many features that you can use, and just take a look. And I really have good experience.
You know, that's yeah, it's Upwork is, I've been using Upwork for years, and I can say without doubt it's been really phenomenal, and has helped solve a lot of different pain points, as you said, to get things done. Here's another good question. What does a typical day, or what does your typical day look like as a solopreneur?
Typical day. If we talk about the full day, I wake up really early, like full, like with the sun, 5:36. I do a little workout, whether it's a simple yoga flow, running on the beach. I'm lucky enough at the moment to live on the beach, and then I start working. Since I start my day early, I usually finish early, which is super important for me because I like to use the daylight. So I still catch the daylight. Here where I live at the moment, in Northeast Brazil, it's one of the best kitesurf spots in the world. So I get to get my sunset kitesurf session to wrap up my day. So this is like about the daily routines. About the work itself, as I'm a consultant and I work on multiple projects, so I need to somehow juggle between different client projects and then non-client work, like all these kind of things, like this webinar, for example. I consider it non-client work, right? But it's still work. It requires some preparation and the time to do. And I'm also spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, networking with people, reading what's up on their side, and enjoying all the threads, interesting threads that are over there. And just simply many other things to do. There was the book, there were the blog posts, guest articles, podcasts, so many other things. And this is like this work that is usually, I'm also mentor many startup organizations. So they have these monthly events or quarterly pitch events for startups, like so many things. And this work is good part of this work, I have to say, it's still not paid. I'm still not on that level to be this famous international speaker who charges for that. But I do think it pays off. And I love doing this. And this is what I always say. I always try really hard to do the presentation quickly to have enough time for questions and answers, because this is also the time when I learn. When I listen to the questions from people, I learn what people are concerned about, what could I do better so that I can offer, better service and all of that. So I think this work that is not paid, it pays off because you make connections, you learn. And also as a solopreneur, you do miss communication, collaboration, interaction with the community. So this is super important. So in one day, I really try always to have part of the day for the client work, like the hours that I committed to, that I charge for, etc., and also part of the day for all these other activities.
What's the question that you get asked the most by your audience or by your clients? Is there a particular question that you are finding comes up more often than not?
I think it's about this kind of a roadmap, because people are at this point A and they usually know about this point B where they want to go. But then there is this roadmap that they need clarity on and they need some guidance on, right. And even accountability sometimes, So because many people, either they're solopreneurs or they're startup founders without founders. So many people are really on their own. And sometimes having somebody there to help you, like I provide this like guidance from the idea from the MVP launch, is important. And then when we are talking about hiring additional people in the team, it's also nice to make these plans, like in which order, which role, what will be the arrangement, which person we choose in the end, how do we provide the input for them, like all of that, how to do this properly. But this roadmap, I would say that this is the most important to get right.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. And when I started as a solopreneur as well, it was really just trying to get where you want to go and get the coaching that you need. to get past, what might be stopping you. Um, Here's another great question. And I think you touched on a couple of them, but what are the biggest benefits, in your opinion, what are the biggest benefits and drawbacks that you've found being a solopreneur?
I think it depends a lot on the personality. We are all different, which is amazing. Otherwise, it would be a boring world, right? So I'm sure that there are people who like this, like big organizations, structure, like exact apartments for those certain things. But I personally wouldn't go for that, even for some, I don't know, amounts of money. For me, I really like this personal touch. I like that what I do, I really do as my own thing, as in my own way. And I love these collaborations with very different people. By the way I work right now, I'm really engaged in so many different collaborations, partnerships, projects with so different people with different backgrounds, like from different geographic backgrounds to like type of work they've done previously, etc. And for me, this is really amazing. I think when you work in classic environment, it's more or less all similar. People are like over there in that building for many years working on this one type of product or work, and like somehow like over the course of years they become more similar in certain way, and I really like this kind of diversity. So for me, that's something that's really amazing. What's a challenge, what's difficult is this situation that you're on your own, so very often you don't have anybody to like exchange ideas, brainstorm, get some support, like discuss. Sometimes you really feel that you are very much alone and you miss this kind of interaction. And that's why I'm trying to make up for that by having many collaborations to delegate, to have partnerships, etc., so that still somehow I have the interaction.
I think that's part of what you touched on before with, you said, it's a lot of it's unpaid work, but there are opportunities to collaborate. Hold on one second. I'm working from a golf course, so there you get some noise in the background. There are opportunities to collaborate, and those areas where you may end up not being paid, you end up either establishing relationships or gaining some knowledge that further help with that. One of the things about that I found that has been important with regards to being a solopreneur is figuring out ways, efficiencies. And out of curiosity, what are there any areas in your business as a solopreneur where you found the ability to automate? Like, do you have structures to automate what you do right now?
So that's one of the challenges I'm facing, and if anybody in the audience has a tip, would be also useful for me, because I think it's a little bit different when you are doing something with a physical product.
Right.
We have many solopreneurs having those kind of e-commerce businesses, right? Selling some products, and then they need to scale, and they can automate. They use, like for example, Zapier, that they get information from one sheet to another, and then there is a virtual assistant doing certain manipulation, and like they have this set up. I actually have some people who did this so well that now they have the outsourced school where they actually help other people automate stuff, leveraging the freelance, the virtual assistants, etc. But this is a little bit different than what I do, and I am guessing that other people in the audience in similar situation as mine, because my product is my expertise.
Right.
So it's really me, like my voice, my face, my knowledge, my experience. So this is was a little bit difficult to automate. So as I mentioned, I can, for example, have a person who's going to always edit my audio for the podcast or something like that. But that's all like the somehow the surrounding work, the core of my work, it's still on me. What I'm trying to do is to make it more abstract, to get out of those daily tasks like checking every single feature that got implemented. So to delegate this kind of thing to assistants, and like if every option is there, on the page, something like that, and to focus more on the big picture strategy, roadmap, and all of that, and that, because it's simply impossible to take care of all these little details, and also then it's much more easier for you to not be present there on daily basis.
Totally helpful being able to just delegate the minutia, right? Get it out of your way. Here's a question. I've had a bunch of folks that are, they're either in a 9 to 5 and they're kind of like, I've reached my max, or they have a passion that they want to do and they want to spend time and build a business out of. And the question comes up, I don't know that I'm cut out for that. Can anybody be a solopreneur, or are there specific characteristics that you've seen that have people best suited to be a solopreneur, or even are these skills of being a solopreneur teachable, right? Like I know there's folks out there that are like, I want to do this, but am I actually cut out for it?
I would say that it's teachable and learnable. Like it's possible, of course, to improve. And I would say that anybody can be, but the question is, does everybody really want to be? As I said, there are personalities, and it's completely legit, that simply feel more aligned with having this like structure, and they don't like many unexpected things. On the other hand, I really like it. For me, it's like kind of adventure. I never know like who's gonna send you a message next week and what kind of invitation I'm gonna get. For me, it's exciting, but also there are weeks when nobody sends me an invitation, but then you need to also be ready for that. And there are some people who simply don't like this kind of roller coaster. They want to have some structure and to relax. So I think it depends on whether you want this or not. It depends on the whole personality. As I mentioned, I spent 10 years backpacking as a nomad. It's also not something that probably everybody likes to do. Many people like to have more of a structure. But if you want to do it, I would say that it's possible. And there is this blog post that I mentioned on my website where I actually talk about this, how you can find your so-called superpower. Very often it's a combination of very common skills, let's say, because we often think this skill I have, it's so common, so many people have that, like it's nothing that I can make special about myself. But actually the combination of all of that is what's unique to us. And we are not talking only about the formal skills that we got from the university, etc., but it's also everything we did as a hobby, as volunteer, with friends, etc. Even these kind of things like traveling. Traveling is something that really teaches you how to have extensive people skills like that. That's all part of your personality and of your superpower that you can offer. But then you need to find also a niche, a very specific niche that you target and offer this exact service to them. So you really need to understand, because your expertise is like any other product. There is a pain point, there's a solution, there is a target audience, there is a niche. This is what you need to do well. And the last point I want to mention, the rest is in the blog post, is do not go ahead and just send your CVs to people, because CV makes sense when somebody makes a job posting and then they have a job posting with requirements and there's your CV and the HR does the matching. But if you are trying to approach people that never ever posted a job, they're not even like aware that they might need you, then your CV won't help. What's going to help is your solution to the struggle they're having, something that you can mention as a solution to that they can feel that they identify with that. And in that blog post, I mentioned the example of like a hungry person wanting a ready-made dish instead of list of the ingredients. Because when you're hungry, you want the dish in front of you. You don't want to listen to the whole recipe. This is the thing what we often do with the CVs. We just send a CV with like, this is the year when I graduated, this is the certificate, and the person is like really not into reading that. What they want is that you offer a solution for their struggle. For example, in my case, very often I hear the founders talking about the exact same thing. Like, I had this amazing idea, I got the program, we started working, and now I hit a dead end. It's not working anymore. I don't know how to translate my requirements. On the other hand, I don't have time to run after the investments. I'm really hitting a dead end. And then when I offer my service as a solution, they feel aligned with that idea, and they're not necessarily going around and asking me to show my diploma or whatever. I mean, we can deal with that later, but the first, what they want to hear is actually the solution to their struggle.
That's, obviously, totally the most important thing. Just get it not being a pain point. Like get the pain point handled. We've got time for one last question. I like this one. What are the biggest benefits or drawbacks that you've found being a solopreneur?
I think we kind of covered that. So as I mentioned, it really depends on a personality. there is this whole thing, like with any entrepreneurship, including solopreneurship, this whole thing of adventure and the challenge. So I think it's specific personality that goes after that. So then I would say it's a benefit. You have all this flexibility, and it's interesting and it's exciting, and you're your own boss. For many people, it means a lot. But yeah, the drawbacks is that you're on your own, that they are good and bad weeks and days, and it's a roller coaster all the time, and very often you're not sure if this bad day is going to be one day or more than one, and again you're alone over there, and you know, things like that. So I would say that it really depends on a personality. If you want to do it, I think it's a good chance that you're going to be successful, but you really need to want it.
Yeah. And it makes time for kite surfing. That's a benefit.
Yeah, that's one benefit. Flexibility and no boss.
Yeah, totally. Well, awesome. Tijana, is there anything that you want to just leave our attendees with before we go at all?
Just remember that remote work is much more than replicating an office. It gives us access to the expertise on demand, and we can get it in the amount we can afford and we want and we need. So if you're a solopreneur as myself, don't feel too solo for too long. Get out and start collaborating with the rest of us. We're all service providers and consumers. We are one network of collaborators, and we can help each other, even if it's just to bounce off the ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us on our webinar Wednesday, and looking forward to doing this again and learning more from you as we move along.
Thank you, Eric. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, too, Tijana.